Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Planning Applications Committee meeting of Thursday, the 3rd of May. Can I just remind members that this meeting will be recorded and made available for public listening, although there is one member of the public or one representative who does not wish to be recorded, and that will be duly adhered to at the appropriate juncture in the planning meeting applications today. Lucy, can we have Sederunt and apologies, please?
Good morning, everyone. We have 16 members present. We are quorate, and so far I have apologies from Councillor Tarbreoch, Councillor Fairbairn and Councillor Young. Councillor Blake and Councillor Ian Crothers are not present, but may be along later in the meeting.
Thanks, Lucy. Declarations of interest, members? Andrew?
Chair, I've got an interest in item 4 in the sense that my mother actually operates a lunchtime trade in Stranraer, so I'll sit out on that one.
Thanks, Andrew. Any other members? Okay. Lucy, can you take us through the procedure for today, please?
The Planning Applications Committee will consider each application in turn as detailed on the agenda. Case officer or other appointed officer will make a short presentation addressing the determining issues accompanied by digital images. Any late information, amendments or corrections will be reported at this time. Members may ask questions of officers following the presentation on points of clarification. The chairman has been provided with a list of eligible representatives who have registered to speak at this meeting within the period specified in council policy. No other persons will be allowed to speak. The chairman will individually invite those who have registered in advance to speak to make their presentation, after which they may be questioned by committee members. No questions may be asked of members. The order of eligible parties being heard will be as follows: third parties objecting to an application, third parties supporting an application, statutory consultees objecting to an application, elected members of Dumfries and Galloway Council who are not members of the Planning Applications Committee. Such members should withdraw from the committee chamber after making their presentation. Applicants or their agents. Representatives have been placed in alphabetical order, and a copy of the public speaking list is available from the committee officer taking notes of our proceedings. Presentations will be strictly limited to 3 minutes per person, excepting for national and major developments, which by their very nature are more complex, where the time limit will be 5 minutes. The chairman of the committee will ask you to come to a conclusion if you take too long. Representatives are encouraged to use the time allotted to clarify any points they consider material and address the determining issues. Certain matters are not normally material planning considerations and will not be taken into account by the Council when deciding on a planning application. Representatives should not raise any new matters without explaining why they were not raised earlier with the case officer. Please do not repeat what is in the report, as members will have already read the report. After all the representations have been heard, the meeting is then in formal session, and no members of the public may address the committee from the public gallery. The Planning Applications Committee will then proceed to determine the application, or, where appropriate, agree a recommendation to be made to full council, who will determine the application.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Now come to the minute of the meeting of the 5th of April 2018. Is that true record? Councillor McKee and Councillor Lever.
Point of order, Chair, before we agree these minutes. This declaration of interest, I wasn't at the last meeting, and I don't think that's really relevant in this case, but I'm very concerned that one of our colleagues had declared an interest by virtue of the fact that he had had discussions with the applicant, however had not predetermined application. Now, it's been my understanding all the time I've been in the Planning Applications Committee that only discussions are held in here. If we're approached by applicants, agents or anybody else, we advise them that we cannot discuss any item that's up for planning before it comes into this room. And I'm very concerned that they declared an interest but stayed in the room and I understand he talked for over 20 minutes on the subject. So it's got to give us great cause for concern, that Chair, with all due respect. But we're going to be labelled as, well, if you're going to speak to somebody in the planning committee, they'll get it passed free. Well, I know within our group we never discuss planning applications. What happens in other groups, I don't know. But we do not discuss planning applications out with this room. And it's, as I say, it's given me great cause for concern, this item.
I think, strictly speaking, members of the public can approach any member of this committee, or indeed any member of the council. They can speak to the member on any matter, and provided the member doesn't make a commitment in any particular aspect of an application, then that's perfectly acceptable. And at the end of the day, it's down to the member to determine whether or no he or she has a declaration of interest that makes it important or significant enough to leave the room or not participate. I'll ask David, but there are other members wanting to speak. I've got Jeff, and then I've got Ian Carruthers.
Chair,
there is another thing, of course. Lucy just reminded me. We can only discuss the detail of the minute. We can't really enter into a debate about the specifics, but we'll see what other members have to say, and I'll ask David City to come in last. Jeff?
Yeah, my concern was exactly the same, that supposedly they had not predetermined the application. My impression was, and we can interrogate the audio recording of the meeting, that it had been predetermined. That is my opinion.
Ian, and then Ivor.
Apologies for my slight lateness, Chairman, but I wasn't at the last meeting, so, and ultimately, and exactly the same what Councillor McKee is bringing up with regards to we follow the same procedures. What it seems like that the Labour group seem to follow, but we're very strict in regards to that. So, but there's accusations being made here towards this, being personalised towards individuals. It looks like it could be Dougie Campbell when I read the minute, but I haven't actually seen. It could be David James, I don't know. So therefore, when we read the minute, it's unclear to me if it's being personalised. This is not what the minutes are here for. The minutes are here to either be agreed, amended, or whatever it may be. There seems to be some kind of personal attack from some individuals on other individuals. That's what it looks like.
Can I respond
No,
to that?
we're not getting into an argument. We'll have Ivor hasn't wanting to speak, and then I'll ask Lucy and David to summarise where we are with this. If there are issues about things like declaration of interest, if there are issues about call-in by elected members, then there is a process that we could refer this to. I think it would be the Standing Order Subcommittee or Policy Committee, but whatever. No Standards Commission, no. I'm talking about our processes. Ivor.
Chair, my understanding is, and what my practice is, if someone approaches me about a planning application, I will advise them on procedure, not on whether I would back it or not. So if they ask me, how do you go about this, I will tell them that. They can tell me what they like, it doesn't influence what I would decide. But the other thing is, we're also told that within the report there is evidence there to inform us of how to make a decision. Now, possibly on the last issue, after reading the report, someone had made a determination. There was no speaking at that item because it had been called in by a councillor. There was no objection, so there was going to be no new information. So someone could, on receiving the papers, look at the papers and make up their mind which way they wanted to go, and then prepare something in advance of the meeting because there's no other information being delivered to us.
Okay, so we're here to determine the minute. If there are issues to be raised, they will be raised some other forum, and if there's a discussion to be had, then that's something that we will do at a later date, or another committee will do on our behalf. Is this a true record of the meeting that took place on the 5th of April? Okay, thank you, members. We then go to agenda item number 4, 25 Castle Street, Stranraer, planning application for change of use from shop to shop Café, 18/0002/full, Members are asked to approve the application unconditionally, and the case officer is Mary Mitchell. Mary, when you're ready, will you take us through your presentation, please?
Okay, we'll look at the slides first. The site is located in the centre of Stranraer. It's a mid-terraced property. It's within the designated town centre for Stranraer. It's also within the designated prime retail frontage area. This plan shows the centre, the town centre of Stranraer. That's what's shaded. There's a dashed dark line as well. It's not terribly clear on the slides, but I'll show you where the site is with the pointer. Just in there. That's the application site there. The existing business operates as a shop selling ice creams in the main. It is proposed to change the use of the property to include a café. As the property lies within the prime retail frontage of Stranraer, current policy requires proof that there is no market demand for this property as a retail unit. A demonstration of unsuccessful marketing for at least 12 months is usually required. No such marketing has taken place in this instance. However, the draft local development plan number 2, which is on track for adoption in September 2019, proposes to delete the prime retail frontage policy, which is an effort to renew town centre vitality and viability by being less restrictive. The proposed deletion of this policy is a material consideration in assessing this application. If the property were marketed for 12 months unsuccessfully, by May 2019, the draft LDP2 will have gained in significance, and the marketing report may hold little relevance in the assessment of this change of use application. Instead, it is suggested in this case, policy ED5 on town centres provides sufficient protection for the role and function a town centre provides. As a minor departure from policy, the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just really like some clarification from the case officer in regards to the fact that a material, we can take into account the proposed LDP2 that's coming forward. However, my understanding is when we're in planning committee here today, that hasn't been adopted as yet, so therefore we have to comply with LDP1 or LDP at the moment. So
Mary, I'll ask David to deal with this in the first instance. David?
Thanks, Chair. That's really covered largely in paragraph 4.2. It's absolutely correct that the current LDP, which was adopted in September 2014, that's your primary plan to go to. That's the main determining factor. However, where there is some change in policy proposed, then that is a material consideration, as Mary said. It's something we've got to bear in mind. In this particular instance, because of the length of time it would take, the 12 months to actually produce the report, by the time that report had been produced, the LDP is likely to have advanced further. We have a clear signal from the full council, which considered the proposed plan to actually do away with policy ED7. So on that basis, yes, we're accepting it is a departure from the adopted plan, but a material consideration of quite some weight in this instance is the fact that ED7 will disappear as the council has it at the moment. So on that basis, it's rare. I don't think I've had an instance which has gone to committee yet where the proposed plan is so significantly different that we're actually saying that has quite considerable weight, but this is the first instance I've known that occur.
Thanks. Come back, Katie.
I was just going to carry on before you came in there, which was fine. In terms of advertising to make sure that the space wasn't, under our current plan, are there any empty buildings or empty shop frontages in Stranraer already sitting empty that would fulfil the LDP current plan, that we should leave space for retail outlets.
Mary?
Well, there are empty units in Stranraer. Along Castle Street, I had counted one. I can't give you a definitive number for all of Stranraer. The way the retail policy works is it prioritises retail usage on the ground floor within that dashed area that we saw in the plan, rather than, yeah, okay.
Thanks, Katie. Ivor?
Chair, can we have clarification on this LDP too? I asked at full council, would this have an effect on any future plan applications? Because there was one just on the edge of my ward whereby there was a material change in the LDP2, and I was told that it would have no impact whatsoever and it wouldn't be a material consideration because we hadn't adopted it yet. Now, I was of the opinion that Mr. Sutty put forward that it would have a material impact because it's in the LDB2 and we've actually moved towards that. So what is the situation with this when at full council another officer gave us another answer?
My understanding was it's always referred to and it's always a consideration of some weight. But David, would you like to pry that, please?
Well, again, I'll just go back to paragraph 4.2, where it makes it clear that it's a material consideration, albeit of limited weight at this stage. The particular instance of this policy, ED7, is the fact that currently it requires a whole year's worth of assessment from the site being actively marketed, and only after, at the end of that year, does it become the case that under the current policy we would consider it to be possibly acceptable. Because of where we're at in the stage of the plan, it appeared to us unreasonable to require a whole year's worth of marketing to be done when this is actually a relatively minor change of use. The building will still have an element of Class 1 retail. It's just the fact it will become a mixed use with retail and the Class 3 food and drink activities. So it's unusual, happy to concede that, but on this instance we reckon that it would have been unreasonable for the scale of the change of use to require a whole year's worth of marketing to be done.
And as usual, Ivor, it's in members' hands at the end of the day to decide.
Chair, it was just to say, I agree with what Mr. Sutty says, but another officer at full council said it was nothing to do with it, and it's just consistency for members' benefit would be good.
Okay, thanks, Ivor. Elaine?
A bit of clarification, because it's not really about how it's used at the moment, because the way I read it, at the moment it has a sort of cafe function because it has a small number of seats that people can eat ice creams or whatever on the premises, and basically it's just asking to extend that area and what's on the menu. It's not, I think we're getting to a lot of discussion about what seems to be a change of use, and it isn't, it's just an extension of the use, or am I not really understanding it properly?
Is that a question, just a
well, just a bit of clarification, because we're talking as if it's it has to be marketed, or it should be marketed for 12 months. Now, she's already got a business here which involves people coming in, buying things to eat and having the opportunity of sitting down while they eat them. And to my mind, this was just an extension of what she's doing, that she's now going to sell hot food and have a larger area where people can sit down and eat it.
Mary, can you wait to this one?
Paragraph 1.5 clears that up. Change of use proposals sometimes have a grey there's a grey area between when one use turns into another use. But in this instance, the activities at the site are considered to be Class 1 retail because she sells ice creams and hot drinks, and a few people sit in. But she's wanting to, the tenant's wanting to expand the hot food and hot drink element of that and include more seats, which by our reckoning, tips the balance, so it is no longer considered Class 1 retail, and it's now Class 3 food and drink. So it is a mixed use because she's still selling the ice creams and a few toys as well. So it's...
Thanks, Elaine. Jeff?
Yeah, mine's for clarification as well. 3.1D, I noticed the objector isn't down to speak, so perhaps Mary can clarify. It says the current cafe operated by the applicant may close in favour of the new proposed cafe. I thought it was just an extension of what's actually been delivered from those premises, so it's not a question of it closing and another one opening.
Mary?
Sorry, which part of 3.1?
B.
I think the tenant has got another business in Stranraer, and that's what the object is referring to there. So I think their suggestion is that if she's got two businesses, she might favour one over the other.
Jeff, thank you. Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Is it not the case that current policy directs Class 3 uses to the first floor of these properties? And for customers with mobility problems, that is a major disadvantage.
Mary?
I'm just looking up that policy. Right, on paragraph 4.9, policy ED7 on the prime retail frontages states that Class 1 retail developments at ground floor level and non-retail uses, including residential on upper floors, will be supported. So it isn't necessarily saying that Class 3 should be on first floor location.
Right, so it is not exclusive. The Class 3 could potentially be on the ground floor.
According to policy ED7, the current policy ED7, within the prime retail frontages, they're wanting retail to be located on the ground floor within that dashed area, unless there's sufficient marketing to show that there's no market demand for that use.
Thanks, Mary. Are there any other questions for the case officer? Ivor?
Just with regard to 417, where it says no external physical alterations, if you're doing more hot food, do you need to have any flues or anything like that put in for extractors?
Mary?
They've said there'll be no external changes. They'll need to rejig the interior. I don't think there's much of a kitchen there at the moment. So they're just out with the conservation area, so it'll have to be assessed later if it is needed some sort of flue or extractor. It'll need to be assessed, and they might need to submit an application later.
Thanks, Mary. Any other questions for the case officer? Thank you very much, Mary. There are no speakers registered for this agenda item, so we are into session, members. Any recommendations? Thank you very much. Lucy, can you confirm the decision of the committee, please?
And I can confirm that the decision in relation to item 4 is to agree the recommendations as per the report.
Thank you, Lucy. We come to agenda item number 5, erection of dwelling house.
Chair, can we bring Councillor Gusty back in?
Yep. And we will have the recording device switched off for the sake of the first speaker in this agenda item. Tracy, is the speaker off? The recording device off? Okay. So, agenda item 5, erection of dwelling house at Tarbreoch Dairy, Kirkpatrick Durham, Castle Douglas. The application type is planning permission in principle. The recommendation is to refuse, and the case officer is Iona Brooke. The reference is 18/0056/PIP. Jeff?
Just for clarification, can an agent actually, under the current standing orders of the council, request not to be recorded? Seems totally bizarre.
I understand they can, and I understand that's why it's been agreed to, but David will help us.
It doesn't happen very regularly, but yes, it is open to people to request that they're not recorded.
So, well, Andy?
I take it by that he means when he's actually speaking.
Yes, absolutely.
So the rest will be recorded. Yes.
Absolutely, yes. I'm still recording now because you've questions for the case officer for the presentation you get.
Thank you.
It's only when the agent and the applicant comes forward that the recording device was switched off, and only for that period of time, and then we'll come back again. So, Iona, can you take us through your presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair. As the Chair said, this is an application for a new house in the countryside. In order for it to be considered favourably, the proposed development would require to comply with one or more criteria set out within policies H2, which is housing development in villages, or H3, housing in the countryside. In this instance, the applicant has requested that it be considered under criteria 2 of policy H3 that he requires a new house in the countryside because it is essential at that location for the needs of his agricultural business. No other policies apply in this instance. The site is just located just south of Kirkpatrick Durham. It's highlighted in red, as you can see in that slide there. The applicant has already got an existing dairy unit, which was approved a few years ago on site. This is a slide that shows the area of land which is detailed in blue here. Everything to the east and south of that is owned by the applicant. This is his existing dairy unit here, and the area hatched in red is where the site is proposed for the new dwelling. This is the current proposal site. Just looking at it, you can see the existing dairy unit just to the rear at a slightly lower elevation. This is the view looking east from the C12S public road. There is no planning constraints relating to the site. However, adjacent to the access, which you can see they are servicing the dairy, this is a core path which leads to the rear of the Kirkpatrick Durham itself. This is just another view of the site, the flat area here. Oh, sorry. This area here is the site proposed with a view of the dairy behind it. This is a view looking due south, a view looking towards the main road, and a view looking back towards Kirkpatrick Durham with the church beyond, and another view looking towards Kirkpatrick Durham. Again, this is the core path with the adjacent access track. Now, this is just an aerial view of the slide that showed earlier detailing the applicant's land. This area here is all owned by the applicant and his family. This area, it shows the footprint of the existing dairy. This is the site of the proposed house, and this site here, which is approximately 400 metres away from the proposed house, is where the applicant actually resides. Whilst the applicant indicates it is desirable for a new dwelling on this site, it has not been demonstrated that there is a genuine essential need in this instance, and given the proximity of the farm to Kirkpatrick Durham and the applicant's current dwelling, it has not been demonstrated that there is an essential need for a dwelling house at this location as required with policy H3, and therefore respectfully consider that that application is refused as it's contrary to policy of the LDP. Thank you.
Thanks, Iona. At this stage, questions for the case officer. Katie?
Thank you, Chair. Without going into any of the objections, because obviously we'll have a chance to discuss those when we're in session, but there is mention of the core path, and you mentioned it several times there. Have there been any work done with the countryside rangers to find out what the current state of that core path is? Because there is a suggestion that there's currently restrictions on that core path, and have you consulted whether there would be any restrictions if this was to be approved in terms of the core path, just in keeping the network open for people to access?
Iona?
The agent and the applicant has indicated that the core path has not been restricted in any way and is still open, and the core path officer for the council had no objections to the proposal itself. So as far as remaining, it is still operable.
Thanks, Katie. Any other members? Elaine? Iona?
I think the agent may correct this, but I think Tarbreoch farm was owned by a separate individual some years ago, and when it came up for sale, they retained the use of the farm and the steading and sold the land off separately, to which the applicant and his family purchased the land. So they have never owned Tarbreoch steading and Tarbreoch farmhouse itself.
Thanks, Iona. Any other members? In that case, thanks, Iona. We now come to the register of speakers. We have Les Rogerson and Catherine Elliott. At this stage, can you switch the... Pardon?
Chairman.
Oh, Elaine, sorry, Jane.
I apologise for not picking this up. I'm sorry, just at the very end, the officer suggested that the applicant didn't own Tarbreoch, or the family didn't own Tarbreoch farmhouse. I'm sorry, I've mistaken that in the papers. Is that absolutely clear that they never did?
Iona?
The land holding on which Tarbreoch Dairy is located now is owned by the applicant's parents. When they purchased the land holding in which the dairy is currently situated, they did not purchase the existing steading that had been associated previously with Tarbreoch.
Patsy?
Yes, well, just on that, I understand the steading, but at 415, it doesn't say that the farmhouse wasn't part of it. And in the report, one of the objectors, one of the reasons for objecting is that, you know, they've sold off a house which could have been part of the farm, if you like, and it's not clear in here which is correct.
When the land was sold off, the applicant did not buy the farmhouse or the steading. He only bought the land, so he has never been associated with the farmhouse that was associated with Tarbreoch steading.
Sorry, with all due respect, that is not what is said at 415. It just refers to the steading, not the farmhouse.
We can clarify that with the applicant and the agent up here. Andy?
I'm quite happy to do this in session when it comes later. I'll take your advice on this, but 4.2, I would like to know how this is has limited weight, and because obviously I've not got encyclopedic knowledge of the proposal for LDP2. So if it's got limited weight, what is the limited weight, and why has it been discounted? Do you want me to do that in session, or do you want to do it now?
David will deal with it now, Andy.
4.2 is basically a generic comment that we put in all reports just to make clear that the proposed plan is a material consideration, albeit one of limited weight. With the previous application, there was actually a fundamental change in policy. ED7 was being deleted, for example. With this one here, there is no fundamental change to H3. So basically, we're saying there is this plan, you have to be aware of it, but in fact, there's no material change to the current plan, and it therefore has no weight.
Okay. But I've made a mistake as well, because we have an objector. The gentleman did apply in time. For some reason it wasn't picked up. So the objector gets the opportunity to speak first. So it's a Mr. Poet. So if you'd like to come forward, sir. When you're ready, you'll have 3 minutes to address the committee. I will remind you with 30 seconds to go, just to draw your presentation to a conclusion. Now, if you're kind enough to wait, members might have some questions for you at the end of your presentation. Just whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Would you like me to start now? Okay. Can I first thank the committee for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my wife. With regard to the case officer's report, which recommends refusal of the application, we are happy with that report. We would wish to make the following comments, which were made in our written objections and appear on the case file, and which we consider to be relevant. The report recommends refusal on the grounds that the proposal is contrary to Local Development Plan Policy H3. In addition to the comments in the report and the terms of Policy H3, It is our view that the proposal is not well related to its landscape setting. Further, it may not be of an appropriate design and scale to its location. Ad hoc development such as this proposal forever changes the landscape. With regard to LDP2, OP2, the design quality of new development, the proposal may not conform as it is unlikely to be sympathetic to local built forms. It would not respect the important physical, historic and landscape features of its vicinity. Kirkpatrick Durham Church and Churchyard, which are adjacent to and overlook the site, are Category B listed. With regard to LDP HE2, which relates to conservation areas, the conservation area of Kirkpatrick Durham is immediately adjacent to the proposal site. The proposal would not preserve or enhance the character, appearance or setting of the conservation area, as its design, detailing and scale are likely to be inappropriate. It would not maintain or enhance the quality of views from or into the conservation area. We are in agreement with the case officer's opinion that the applicant has not established a sufficient case that a house on the proposal site is necessary. In view of this, and for the reasons stated, we would urge you to accept the case officer's recommendation to refuse the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Poet. Do any members of the committee have any questions for the objector, Mr. Poet? In that case, if you'd like to resume your seat, sir, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We now come to the applicant and agent, Les Rogers and Catherine Elliott. And again, ladies and gentlemen, when you're ready, you'll be...
Ian, happy to start, Chair, just to get my thoughts on it. Jim McCormick actually summed up where I would have started. I think it's right. If you're looking at this just in its simple context, if it was you look at an agricultural building, middle of nowhere, is it an essential use for a house to be there? Well, each case in its own merits, and that would have to be looked at, but I've never actually come across a dairy, and we'd actually, with breeding stock as well, you wouldn't have some kind of presence on site, some kind of dwelling, whether it was temporary, whether it was permanent. I've never come across that before, so I think this certainly, on just from looking at it, it looks like it's got merit, I would say. You've also got this, Beckfoot also came to mind. We're all aware of that without going into the detail, but certainly in my ward down by Annan, we've got a countryside, we've got what's perceived to be a right of way. This is only a walkway, fair enough, but you've got people going by there, whether it's on foot, whether it's on horses, whether it's on bikes, people on such like, and the health and safety issues that have been created round about that farm in particular. And if there hadn't been people on site to deal with that situation at that moment in time, there was certainly the farm workers, the land workers themselves, they were injured, but there have been injuries to the public themselves in that particular circumstances, probably 3 or 4 occasions. Some of them may well have ended up in fatalities because the average Joe public doesn't know how to actually handle cattle and such like. So, I mean, to me, just as a starter for 10, nobody did their hands up. I think it does actually merit an approval. I'll certainly get someone together in regards to that. But I think that there is security issues, health and safety issues, so on and so forth. But I think, and it is very, very unusual. I've never come across it, and neither obviously has the applicant, to see a dairy farm unit along with breeding stock that hasn't got some kind of permanent or temporary residential unit on site.
So you put a proposal forward?
I'd certainly like to hear what other members say, but I was certainly proposing it to be on the grounds that I haven't got the policy in front of it, but it's really about health and safety, security, the essential, the difference about this case in particular is particularly around about that access, that country access road being there, and you've got a potential for a lot of public being there, whether it's on foot, pedestrian, whether it's on horseback, whether it's on a push bike, which would create a real health and safety issue in my eyes, Chairman. Okay, I'll propose that, Chairman.
No, it was just a query. I don't have a clue what Councillor Carruthers was talking about.
He was making an observation. Katie.
Thank you, Chair. This is possibly I should have asked during the questions for the officer, but we have on 1.6 that there was submitted a police incident report. Now, one of the objections was that the incident that took place was done on a weekday at lunchtime when presumably the applicant was on site. Now, having someone on site didn't stop the incident happening, and there was mention of the fact that the children have been spoken to at the school and the issue has now been resolved, but there's a danger of tourists coming in to cause an incident at the farm. I'm concerned that, I guess I would quite like to know what the police incident report, just to confirm what time did the incident happen, and I'm just struggling to see what the issue is in regards to the children and tourists causing to the animals.
I have the police incident report in front of me, and it happened on the 16th of November 2017 at 13:03 hours.
I've got Ivor, Jane and then Elaine.
Chair, I think when you look through the likes of paragraph 4.8, a new house is essential for the proper functioning of farm, rural business, and there's clearly established need for a worker to be readily available at most times. Well, as someone who's calved cows after coming home for the nightclubs at 3 o'clock in the morning, I can tell you they don't work 9 to 5 cows. So there is a need for someone to be on site out with normal working hours. There is clear evidence that the proposed enterprise has been planned on a sound financial basis. Well, in the report it says supporting documents show that it's a sound financial basis. The need relates to a full-time farm worker or one who's mainly involved in agriculture. Well, the person running the business, and it says 2.39 labour units, so that's 2 people would be there in full-time. There is no appropriate alternative accommodation or economically viable development opportunities available on the land holding associated with the business. Well, there isn't another house, as we've heard, on that land holding or farm. The need for a house is not a direct consequence of a recent severance. Well, recent severance, according to our policy, is 10 years. 2000 is 18 years ago. And if we go back to the further supplementary guidance at 4.7, scale, viability and detail of the farming business operation. It's a viable farm, so it is justified. The labour requirements include the need for specialist workers. Not anybody can go in there without training, because cattle nowadays, you have to be aware of penicillin and stuff like that are going in, antibiotics. So you need someone who knows what they're doing. And the other one, which shows there is a genuine need, the existing residential accommodation available to the farm or business and other development opportunities, and the policy says on the farm or land holding, not off the farm. So there's no accommodation. With that, I would suggest that this application clearly meets H3, and I would move such.
So are you putting a proposal forward?
I'll happily second on that basis.
I've got other speakers, and I'll check to make sure that's a competent proposal. I've got Jane and then Elaine.
Thank you very much. I could equally go through these policies and probably come to a different conclusion. But what I'm actually particularly interested in is the statement by the applicant that it is essential for the needs of security and safety. And that's what the applicant has majored on. And I confess that I do know that there are large scale, very large scale, practically factories, cow factories, which do not actually have somebody living absolutely on site. They make use of technology, and I think that's probably the way we're going. I'm curious at the resistance to securing the business through CCT coverage, because my understanding from rural crime is that the police are very keen on having that level of support and deterrent. I'm also interested to hear that there has not been a problem since the applicant or got the police very sensibly to go and speak to the primary school children. So on that basis, I don't feel that the case has been made to persuade me to go against our own policies. And for that reason, I would propose that we agree the recommendation.
Can you just repeat that, Jane, please? The last part, you going with the officer's recommendation?
I don't think there's anything strange about it. I'd simply agree the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a seconder for that?
Yeah.
Dougie or Elaine?
Yeah,
Elaine.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Dougie. Elaine, do you want to speak or just want to
I wanted to speak as well, actually. I support Jane's amendment to go with the recommendations. In this particular, I think we are actually in danger of driving a coach and horses through our planning policy. This is the second similar application. I mean, in 2 months we've had two very similar applications to go against planning policy, and I think we're in danger of basically tearing up our planning policies if we continue down this road. I don't accept the argument that there's nobody readily available, because the gentleman lives 400 metres away from the business, and therefore, if he were prepared to use CCTV, he would be able to respond to incidents fairly rapidly. I also don't accept that this situation is more liable to rural crime, as the agent said. Actually, the fact that there are people in the vicinity probably makes it less liable for rural crime. A lot of the farms where farmers suffer seriously from theft and all the rest of it is because they're very remote and there's nobody around to see what's going on, and quad bikes and other things are being stolen. So I don't really accept that argument. I'm not sure whether we were being recorded again. I also felt actually that the agent appeared to try to mislead the committee by suggesting that the applicant wasn't actually going to live there, when in fact he was going to live there. Now, I find it a little bit odd that somebody asks not to be recorded and then makes a statement which seems to be contrary to what's actually happening. That's actually not really relevant to my support for Jane Maitland's amendment, but I just feel that there is no real exception to be made for this particular case.
Thanks, Elaine. Jeff?
Jane and Elaine have summarised to a large extent what I was going to say. I think farming by itself is a remote occupation in a lot of areas. If you've got 200 or 300 acre farm, then a lot of it is going to be remote. And I think it's a hen egg laying complex which has just been established this side of Lochmaben. I don't think there's any farmhouse associated with that, so the technology is overtaking the need. And I think once again we are in grave danger of setting the precedent for us to go against our policy. There's no point in having the policy for all the time we got to go against it.
Okay, in that case we have a motion and an amendment. Lucy, can you just confirm the motion and the amendment? We're not having a conversation anymore about that.
Okay, and we've had a motion put forward by Councillor Hislop and seconded by Councillor Gilroy to allow the application and go and have this as an exception to policy.
We are not saying it's an exception to policy. It meets the criteria quite clearly on the 4.7 and 4.8, and that's demonstrated through the business plan that the gentleman has put forward, and it quite clearly states that the genuine need is you have to consider the existing residential accommodation available to the farm or business and other development opportunities on the farm or land holding, of which there are no residential properties on the holding. Therefore, it quite clearly meets the policy. That is because there's nothing there.
I'm just going to ask David to clarify that, because the degree of competency to be established, then Jane Maitland wants to speak. David, can you just confirm that that's the case? Between you and Lucy, anyway.
I'm afraid I would have to disagree. It complies with policy. Members are obviously at liberty to approve it as an exception to policy on the grounds of security or anything like that. But part of the supplementary guidance quite clearly says that there is no appropriate available alternative accommodation or economically viable development opportunities available on the land holding associated with the farm or rural business or nearby settlement. And the whole argument why this is contrary to policy is because of the proximity of Kirkpatrick Durham.
Pardon?
That part is not in the papers. We are told, use the papers. Yeah. It does not say.
With respect, page 23, 4.8, or nearby settlement. It's the bullet 5. Yeah.
Chair, that is once you've exhausted that there is no opportunities on the farm. There is an opportunity on the farm, and it refers mostly to workers rather than to the actual farmer. And it's a case of you need someone on site. That has always been the way in agriculture. Fair enough, if you want to go down factory farming where you put cows into a shed and leave them there till they die and then you pull them out, like some councillors might want to do, some people like to actually take stock into consideration.
Can we just steady up today? It's either with policy or it's no. And we're not going to get into debate about whether it is or no. If I get advice from the governance officer and David that it does not fit policy, then your proposal will either come as an exception to policy or it will not be competent. If that information, advice that I get from them is appropriate. Now you two need to decide.
Well, my view is quite clearly what I just stated. It's favourable consideration will only be afforded to those proposals, and then it goes on and includes or nearby settlement. So I'm quite comfortable with it being an exception to policy for the reasons that were cited about security. That's not a problem, but I'm afraid I cannot agree that it complies with policy.
And Councillor Colours is quite right, I'll decide. So currently, if you're putting that motion forward, it's an exception to policy, or I'm not prepared to accept it. Well, let Jane Maitland speak first.
No, the point's covered by the officer.
Ivor and Patsy.
On one thing that we were told about the nearby settlement, that house is not in the ownership of the applicant, it's his wife. So therefore it's not available necessarily.
He resides there. Has done since 4 years, I think, according to the papers.
Why do we have material factors which determine whether there is a genuine need if we don't take them into consideration?
David?
Well, again, just to be clear, I'm not trying to block a motion here that I'm saying it's competent for the reasons that you said. It's just that phrase, it's an exception to policy, is the only thing I'm looking for.
Ian?
I'm glad they brought this point up. I brought it about 2.5 years ago. It was a farm just on the outskirts of Brightkirk, and that was the stumbling block where they're looking for a site. They had about 6 or 7 labour units. That's the size, intensity, the level of farm. And we went through the local development plan process. I felt that settlement part of it should have been taken out. That argument was put forward and lost. So I do think in regards to, I still support what they're saying. I think the councillor should have the ability to put an interpretation on policy without it being discounted by like yourself, who has final say, is saying it's incompetent. I think we should have that entitlement to interpret the policies in our own way. But ultimately, I think there's still a competent motion when it comes to it, and that's round about there is an access road next to there, countryside access road, that clearly, as I referred to Beckfoot earlier, maybe Councillor Labour doesn't know what that is, but if he spoke to his fellow councillor Archie Dryborough, the Chair of Economy, Environment and Infrastructure, he'd be absolutely clear what that means in health and safety issues in regards to having my own word. It relates very well, it's very, very similar to this, what we're looking at today. There is real health and safety issues. Robotic farm milking, still sitting as a president on the site.
Policy, Ian. No,
That's what I put in the context.
Wait a minute, Ian, stop, please. You were one of the councillors that sat at full council and agreed LDP2, or at least agreed the process. Part of that's the policy. Now, if you want to change the policy, there's a process for that. Currently, the policy we have is set out. It's been interpreted by David and Lucy, and I'm happy to take their interpretation as accurate. And on that basis, if this proposal comes forward today, it's as contrary to policy. Now, if you want to change policy, there's a process for that, but it's not in here at the moment, and it's not today. And we're not going to start to debate the whole policy process and how we got there today.
Jim, can I just say though, just I'll be very, very brief. I just said that the argument was put forward and lost, so I agree with you entirely. I'm usually, when somebody likes something, you usually allow them 3 minutes. You give me about a minute and a half there before you cut me off. Give me the respect that I'm due, please, Chairman. I can put forward a motion that's competent if I want to, but allow me to speak. I'd like to put my point in context.
That, but you drifted on into countryside access during your discussion. We're talking about policy. That was the point I was making to you. It's about policy today and policy now, and about the policy that's currently in place. And if I cut you off prematurely, I apologise for that. but we'll try and focus on the business in hand. Ivor?
Chair, I'll be willing to accept Mr Sutty's recommendation on the grounds that he can tell me the difference between a genuine need and an essential need under planning terms. Because if you have a genuine need, it's essential, I would say.
Well, that'll be determined by us at the end of the day, and Mr Sutty's not getting any recommendation, he's getting advice to me, and what I'm saying to you is, your motion will be accepted if it's contrary to current council policy. Katie?
Can I just confirm, what is the motion? Can we have the motion? The motion's been put forward and there's been discussions of what that is. Can we have clarity of what the motion is that's been forward? The amendment is quite clear as to why the amendment's been put in place, but do we have a clear motion, and can we have that confirmed, please?
Chair, my motion was that it's met the policy because a genuine need had been found, because it meets the scale, the proposal under 4.7, where the scale is there, the labour requirements are there, and there is no building on the site. Now that says it is then a genuine need. I would say a genuine need's an essential need.
But the policy goes on to say or alternative locations nearby. What is it again it says, David? Or nearby settlement, and currently the applicant lives in a nearby settlement.
Chair, but my understanding was that you had to show that there was an essential need for the house to be on that site. That is what we're always told. It quite clearly meets the supplementary guidance which supports it, and it meets the material factors which determine whether there is a genuine need.
I have to go back to many years. Many of you who have been around for a while might remember James Maguire Smith, who is the former governance officer. His advice quite clearly at that time, where there was an application that went to, in those days it was the E&I committee, was that it was up to officers to determine whether or not proposals complied with policy. It was then open to members to go against that policy if they felt there were material considerations to do otherwise. So I'm acting on the advice that I have always believed since I've been with this council for the last 20 odd years. So my view is it is for officers to say whether it complies with policy. It is open to members to disagree with that, as long as they can put forward cases, why not? And that's basically what I'm saying here. My view is that it doesn't comply with policy because of its proximity to a nearby settlement. If members feel that an essential case has been made by virtue of other factors, such as the security, the threat to biosecurity by virtue of the proximity to a core path, etc., that is perfectly legitimate, and I'm not trying to block that.
Ivor?
Chair, well then, if that's the case, I will move that it's an exception to policy on the grounds that the material factors which determine whether there is a genuine need have been met, as in 4.7, along with security.
Do you agree with that, Patsy? Okay, well, we can go to the vote. And can you just remind members what it is we're voting on, Lucy?
Okay, we've had a motion put forward by Councillor Hislop and seconded by Councillor Gilroy that in relation to item 5, as an exception to policy, to allow the application to be granted on the basis that there is an essential need for security reasons, there's a sound financial basis, health and safety. And we've had an amendment from Councillor Maitland, seconded by Councillor Campbell, to agree the recommendation as per the report and to refuse the application. Are we ready to proceed to the vote?
Yep.
Councillor Dempster.
Amendment.
Councillor Campbell.
Amendment.
Councillor Doogie Campbell.
Amendment.
Councillor Crothers.
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson.
Amendment.
Councillor Gilroy. Councillor Giusty.
Motion.
Councillor Hagman.
Amendment.
Councillor Hislop. Councillor James.
Amendment.
Councillor Lever.
Amendment.
Councillor Maitland.
Amendment.
Councillor Martin.
Amendment.
Councillor McComb.
Motion.
Councillor McKee.
Amendment.
Councillor Murray.
Amendment.
Councillor Tate. And I can confirm that the amendment carries. In relation to item 5, the application is refused as per the recommendation in the report.
Thank you very much for your attendance today, members. No other business. Thank you. Thanks you. Same day, different nonsense.